All right, so Module 9. Now, we've gone through a lot, and we are going to kick it up a notch. So in this module, we are going to focus on releasing the weight. Now, there are several things that we've done. Just did a sugar cleanse for those of you that participated in that, and you may have dropped a few pounds, whether you tracked it or not. There are other things that we've done throughout the program that might have caused you to lose some weight, but we were really focusing on awareness and playing with certain habits and getting leverage and preparing a lot of the foundational work. So you may have gotten some tangible results in the form of weight loss or weight release, but now it's going to be the intention. And this is where we just get to kick in a few other of our limiting beliefs or identities or everything else that might get kicked in. So are you guys able to see my video and it's just the static video? Well, if you are, I just turned it on. So I guess it depends on whether you have all the videos up or not. Okay. So let's do a little bit of prep work. It's time to start making our food choices according to future outcomes instead of immediate tastes. We've been looking at this for weeks and weeks and weeks now. When you eat something 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes later, how does it feel? And what is the state that it puts you in? What thoughts do you have? Does it increase your energy or decrease your energy? We've looked at this process through the filters of many things, values, identities, and a bunch of things that I'm going to list here in a little bit. And now it's time to really be intentional with the food choices that we make. And the choices should be dependent on what we want 15, 30 minutes later, an hour later for the rest of the day, rather than what our brain says, this is what our taste buds want. When our brain says that, it's usually coming from some kind of programming around needing sweets or wanting a kick of our energy. We feel low, so we want to drink some sugar or eat some sugar or give ourselves a boost and what have you. And all of that makes a lot of sense in the moment. But the effect of it is what we're really wanting to make our intentional choices around. I remember one time many years ago, I don't know what led us to do this, but my wife and I were talking to our daughter, who was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and she said she wanted some cookies. And we had just come back from visiting my sister and brother-in-law and my daughter's cousin, and she said, my wife, I think, said, do you want the cookie? So my daughter wanted cookies like at night or something. And my wife said, do you want a cookie or do you want a carrot so you can be strong like your cousin Audrey? And immediately my daughter said, I want the carrot, because the carrot was then associated to something that she wanted, which was to be like her cousin Audrey. And when we're younger, those are actually really easy choices to make. When we're older, it's much more difficult because we've got all kinds of emotional baggage and all the things that we've been looking at in this course, but it's still possible. And the reality is the taste leaves very quickly, but the effects of what we put in our body obviously lasts a long, long time. And so I had this awareness several years back. I don't know why it came in at this particular time, but I was at a restaurant and I wanted to order some lobster. And I was thinking, all right, right now I want the lobster. The lobster is going to be like $60 or something. And is it going to be worth it? Is it going to be worth the money? And is it going to be worth what I feel like later? And, with the lobster, I wanted the mashed potatoes and the big old giant thing. I think it was after an event and I wanted to celebrate. So my justification was, we just did a really good job. Let's celebrate. I deserve it. I want lobster. And lobster by itself isn't like super unhealthy. The other things that I was going to eat with it probably were the bigger issue. But for whatever reason, I just had this thought, how long is this satisfaction going to last? And then how long is the effect going to last? And if we apply that to a lot of our food choices, those of us that are addicted to sugars or pastas or just eat carelessly, we're doing these things, we're making these choices based on short-term desire, but then our body gets to deal with it forever. If these are habits, the effects never leave our bodies. So if we're eating sugar constantly, then our bodies don't know what it's like to not be with sugar, which is why the sugar cleanse from the last module was really important for us to kind of get a sense of what do our thoughts look like and emotions feel like and so forth without sugar. And we need to have this sense of what we're doing to our bodies, and is it worth the short-term satisfaction, especially when the satisfaction isn't very real. So a lot of the awarenesses that many of you have been sharing in the group is, when I eat this thing, it doesn't even taste good anymore, or I feel so much worse now. So now that we've got a lot more awareness on what the short-term effects are, what a lot of you are realizing is that the short-term effects aren't even worth it, or the short-term satisfaction isn't even worth it. And so now what we want to do is really bring into this equation intentionality rather. And how can we be intentional and control our impulses? One of the things that we talked about in the very beginning of the course was impulse control, and how that's important for food, but it's also important for all kinds of other areas of our lives. And the more that we slow down with our choices, and we say, if I eat this food, it will lead to blank, blank, and blank. If I eat this food, it will lead to blank, blank, and blank. Which one of those outcomes do I want? And then make the choice from the outcome, and notice when you feel the outcome. Because if you just tell yourself, I can't eat cookies anymore forever, I have to eat carrots, your brain's not going to want that either. Your brain's not going to want anything forever. We talked about that with the sugar cleanse. So if you tell yourself, I want carrots because, or whatever, the food is, because I'm going to be in a meeting in an hour from now, and I want my health and my energy to be maximized in an hour from now. And then you go to your meeting and you notice that your food choice led to this particular energy that you've got in your body. And that's one of the ways that you collect evidence for the choices. And it's also one of the things that you can be proud about later on in the mirror exercise, or just throughout the day. You can notice that you made a certain choice that led to an outcome that benefited you in some way, shape, or form. So most of us are dealing with our short-term state of mind or state of body or state of emotions, and we're trying to manipulate the short-term, immediate feelings with food. And really, most of the time, it's just a numbing mechanism. That's all it is. It's to numb some kind of feeling that we don't want generally. And then the numbing mechanism that we're using, number one, doesn't treat the feeling that we don't want. It just pushes it aside momentarily. And the numbing mechanism is unhealthy for us. So it's giving us no benefit whatsoever, except a fake benefit of pretending that this thing we don't want to feel anymore, or the thing that we do want to feel that we're pretending we don't have access to, is even available through our food. So we want to introduce some more of our analytical, linear, strategic, intellectual mind to the process. Otherwise, our emotional eating habits are just going to continue to create us to be victims of our taste buds and of our emotional lack of control. There are ways to control our emotions that don't involve food. And there are actually ways to control our emotions in a positive sense that do involve food. So we don't have to take food out altogether. We just need to use it intentionally. And if we want to create better feelings in our bodies, we can actually use certain food to do that. But for most people on the planet, they're not doing any of this stuff. And these are the habits that many of us have just because it's the way that we're programmed to eat. And so a question you can ask yourself, if you need a little bit of mental leverage, is, do you like being addicted to whatever? And if your answer is yes, great, then eat like an addict. If your answer is no, great, then stop eating like an addict. And then do the things that will help you not be addicted. When we are addicted, we are under the control of others. We're under the control of other people's emotions, decisions, words. We're under the control of marketers. We're under the control of people who can and want to manipulate us in some way, shape, or form. And that really goes completely against all of our desire for freedom. So for some of us, attacking these eating patterns is going to be a way for you to gain more freedom in your life, well beyond and outside the boundaries of eating and health in general. Now, when we're making these shifts in our diets, and remember, the whole point here is sustainable change, not fast change. When we're making these changes, one of the things that our brains will do is convince us that it's okay for exceptions. And it is okay for exceptions as long as they don't become the norm. I was on a fast weight drop diet probably a year ago or so, and I did really well for maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, and then I had dropped a bunch of weight. I liked the results. I decided it was okay for me to fall off the wagon just a little bit, just as an exception. And literally a week later, I realized that I was giving myself like 2 exception meals per day. And before, there were no exceptions, right? That's one of the things that we do when we fall off the wagon and when our willpower goes away. Then we just start to justify all these exceptions. And then our diet consists of nothing but exceptions, or a huge amount of exceptions. And then I very quickly erased all of the results that I had achieved, which is a extremely common experience, probably for 95% of the people that go on restrictive diets. That's what ends up happening. That's why we do the yo-yo dieting, and that's why we get frustrated, and that's why we don't trust ourselves anymore, and we don't trust diets anymore, and all these negative effects that really affect our personal control in life in general, not just our health. So the bottom line is we pick our pleasure. We're either going to choose our short-term pleasure of our programming, which is almost all the time fake and false. So it's fake because the short-term emotions that we feel are not real. And sometimes it's false because what we think we're going to get are actually wrong. So the distinction there is sometimes we feel like the sugar makes us feel better, but it actually is a false sense, or is a fake sense of feeling better. And sometimes we say we eat the soda, or we drink the fries, or we drink the soda, eat the fries, or what have you, and they're going to taste really good, and they actually don't taste really good. So that's the programmed pleasure that a lot of us have. Or we can commit to fulfillment. Now, fulfillment is what all of us are wanting. It's just not sexy. That's one of the challenges with it. It's in the future, first of all, which means the unconscious mind has a hard time getting excited about something in the future, which is also one of the reasons that I've said several times, it's so important to notice the evidence of your choices so that your unconscious mind can go, oh, I guess we are making progress, or we are able to change the way we feel based on that choice that we made 20 minutes ago. If you tell your unconscious mind that 20 minutes from now you're going to feel something, it's like, you know what, you've been telling me that stuff your whole life and I still don't believe you. So I'm not interested, but I do know if you shove that sugar in my mouth right now, I'm going to feel something. And so we need to start changing the way that we communicate with our bodies and we communicate with our unconscious minds, knowing that it's not going to be easy emotionally because it's not sexy. What most of us are searching for, the sexy, seductive things in all of life, are usually a form of this commitment to short-term pleasure that's either fake or false. So this can help you stay committed to your long-term fulfillment. That's going to help you achieve your goals and stay committed to your purpose, etc. Now, I think one of the things that many of you have discovered about yourself, and I think is the case for just about all humans that struggle with health and food choices, is that almost all of our unhealthy choices are really, if we boil it all the way down, it's a yearning for love of some form. If you want approval, even quote unquote healthy choices. So if you restrict your diet for, let's say, 2 months because you want to fit into a bikini or you want to go back to your high school reunion and get some kind of approval from somebody, or you want somebody to notice how sexy you look or that you've dropped some weight, that's approval, which is a form of love. If you're choosing to eat sugars or baked goods or something to provide you some feeling of good enough, that's love. Some feeling of peace or calm, that's love. Just about everything we're searching for in food is a form of love. Now, most people don't realize that until we dive in and do some of the exercises that we've done. But if you realize that what we're after is love, and love cannot come in the form of food, healthy love at least, can't come in the form of food, then we can start detaching our food choices from our desire to feel, experience, and give love. Because some of us are using food to give love to others, which is also unhealthy. If that's the only reason, or if that's the main reason. And when we can detach the form of food from the function of experiencing love, which is what we're actually desiring, then we can find that love in other ways and then make our food choices separate from our desperate search for love. And another distinction that's really important inside of the love conversation is internal versus external validation. So one of the things that I think I've said a few times is, if you eat to be healthy, you'll lose weight. If you eat to lose weight, you won't necessarily be healthy, and it won't be sustainable. But if your commitment is to health, which is a process, then you will, as a byproduct, drop weight, which is an outcome. It's a result. And that's one of the ways that we can validate ourselves internally. So we judge ourselves as doing a good job if we followed our eating plan or if we fed our body healthy foods, not just if we dropped weight. That's an external validation in the form of a measurement from a scale. And again, that doesn't mean that that's not something that we want to look at. It is one of the intentions here, but we can't only source our validation from external means and be stable in the process. Now, another really important piece of external validation is through the mouths of other people. And about 1.5 years ago, or maybe close to 2 years ago, I was pretty committed to my weight release journey. And I'd gotten down to a weight that I hadn't been before since college. So this is like 25 pounds or 25 years. And I got below 170 pounds. I think I weighed at one point 168 pounds. And I felt great in my body. I felt vibrant. I felt like I had my vitality back. I started to play basketball, was really diving into these positive identities. And then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. And I didn't realize at the time. But the validation that I was receiving from other people was not positive. In fact, I was told by several people that are close to me and that I care about some comments that were quite negative. They weren't like demeaning comments, so they weren't negative judgments towards me, but they were negative. They had a negative effect. So like my sister-in-law, we went to her house right around that time that I was 168 pounds. And the first thing she said is, "Oh my gosh, you're so skinny. We need to fatten you up." Oh, okay. Now, intellectually, I get that that's her judgment based on her own relationship to food or being thin or whatever. I get it. And at the time, I didn't think that it had a big negative effect on me. And I truly don't care about what she thinks, but it was one of the puzzle pieces. I don't know if my wife said something or somebody said something kind of on behalf of my wife. I truly don't remember whose mouth this came out of, but somebody said, now you're getting close to our weight. And it was a woman talking. And for some reason, I think somebody said, like, although this doesn't make sense to me in the moment, why they would speak on behalf of Sybil, but it was like, you can't be weighing what I weigh. And I don't know, Sybil might have said it or some version of it or something. So I don't really fully remember, because at the time, none of these landed. None of these really hurt or anything. It wasn't until honestly about a year and a half ago, or a year and a half later, year to year and a half later, I looked back and went, oh, whoa, now I see that some of these comments, they might have stuck a little bit. And then somebody else told me I looked like an Ethiopian with a giant head because my body was too thin now. And there was one other comment that for whatever reason I'm forgetting right now. Anyway, the point is, I certainly didn't get celebrated by other people. And what I can look back and realize now is that I didn't celebrate myself enough to overpower what I didn't get from them. So when it comes to your goals of dropping weight, you've got to be aware of what other people may say or may not say. That's all dependent on their relationship to food or health or what it feels like when they see somebody else lose some weight and they feel like they can't lose any weight. So the easiest way to make themselves feel better is make the weight loss bad or dismiss it in some way. Those are all ways that humans deal with their own insecurities. And it's important for us to notice that if we are searching for somebody to give us that validation, we're in trouble. Very rarely will the people that we generally hang out with be the ones that celebrate us for things that they can't do themselves. And it doesn't mean that they don't love us and they're not encouraging us. It's just the way humans interact. And I would say more so women than men, especially with issues relating to body. And the other thing that I think is important with women to understand is when you do get those compliments from people, the default response for most women is to dismiss the compliment. So if somebody says, "Oh, wow, you look fantastic," and you dismiss it with however you dismiss it, "Oh, it was easy," or you're just saying that, or yeah, it's probably not going to last very long, or however you tend to dismiss the compliments, then you're taking it away and you're telling your unconscious mind that all the work you've put in is not worth it, because even if people notice it and celebrate us, you're just going to dismiss it anyway. So I might as well just go get the cake. So I want you to understand that sometimes dismissing a positive comment or compliment is as bad and sometimes even worse than receiving a negative comment or a negative judgment. So what most of us want is people to approve of us, and yet a lot of times when they approve of us, we don't receive it. So whatever it is that you're wanting from other people, you've got to give it to yourself. So the external validation shifts to internal validation, which is why the mirror exercise is so critical. That's the time for you to internally validate yourself through kind words. And when we get into the deeper challenges, and some of you have already experienced some deep challenges, and who knows, maybe it won't get any worse. So I don't want to predict that everything's going to, get a lot harder from here forward. But just remember, we're changing emotional habits. Now, some people know or have heard the idea that it takes 21 days to change a habit. Habits come in different forms. What that quote, to my understanding, is referring to, or a concept, is neurological habits. How long does it take to rewire the neurology in our brains? But when you attach emotion to those neurological habits, that number doesn't necessarily stick. You could attach positive emotions and change a habit in your brain immediately because there's a big, important reason to do it. And so you might have a habit that has lived for years and years and years, and over the course of a day, change that habit because the reason is big enough. Like, let's say you have a heart attack and you survive, and as soon as you are able to get out of the hospital, you immediately stop eating fried foods, or you stop eating carbs, or you stop eating whatever your doctor told you need to stop eating. You don't need 21 days to change that habit because it came with a lot of emotion. It came with a lot of leverage in it. And if there are emotional habits that we're confronting here, it might take longer than 21 days. And all of us are individual collections of experiences. So there's no one size rule or approach, but just understand that emotional habits are certain kinds of animals. And they require, when we want to change emotional habits, it requires a purpose, a simple plan, not a complex, overwhelming plan. The challenges we have in our lives are already complex, overwhelming, complicated. We need simplicity to cut through that stuff. So we need a simple plan, consistency, self-awareness, self-encouragement, patience, and a hell of a lot of support. That's what it usually takes to change emotional habits. Now, a lot of people are just going to decide that they don't need any of this stuff, or they shouldn't need any of this stuff because they already teach health, or they've done this before, or they're smart, whatever reason that they might come up with. And then they'll use it as a reason to not include one of these variables. And then all that does is perpetuate the story of, I'm not good enough and I'll never succeed. Or I don't want to need help or support because that's a sign of weakness. And all that is nonsense, you guys. The human brain works a certain way. The human spirit works a certain way. Emotional habits work a certain way. If you want to set yourself up to succeed, then do what needs to be done. Don't try to use your ego and your willpower to attempt something that's literally impossible, or 1,000 times more difficult than if you just follow the rules of what it takes to change emotional habits and stop beating yourself up saying that you're weak or you're stupid or you're undisciplined if you eat a bunch of M&Ms before this call. Now, as we attempt to stay committed to this healthy plan, I can virtually promise that none of us are going to stay 100% committed to it, and that's just because we're human. But there are ways that we can increase our odds of staying on the plan and or when we fall off our plan to get back on the plan as quickly as possible. And these are a recap of a lot of the things that we have looked at, explored, exercised in this course specifically. Accountability partner. Some of you have stopped connecting with your accountability partner, or you never connected with her or him, or you never even tried. Here's what a lot of people do. They reach out to somebody, they connect with somebody, and for whatever reason, the accountability partnership does not work, and then they hold on to this idea, well, I tried it and it didn't work for me. Really? You tried one person one time. Imagine if we had that philosophy in dating. Most of us wouldn't be married. It's like you get one shot. And if the crush that you have in high school doesn't work out, well, then I guess marriage is just not for you. Imagine if we had that philosophy toward riding a bike, toward tying our shoes, toward all kinds of these things that require multiple attempts. And for whatever reason, I've found in these programs, people give themselves one shot or no shot for accountability partnerships. And I'm here to tell you that's just not wise. So if your accountability partnership hasn't worked out, that means that you are in the majority. Most of them aren't going to work out immediately. You've got two different people. We've already talked about how difficult it can be for an individual person to deal with all the stuff that we're dealing with. And then we put two people together, and now you've got to form some kind of a relationship based on all those things that are individually difficult to manage a lot of times, whether it's a romantic relationship or an accountability partnership or a business partnership. Relationship is not easy. So if your accountability partnership hasn't been working, then figure out a way to make it work. The concept of accountability and support is required. If you tried it once or twice and it didn't work, that doesn't mean accountability doesn't work for you. And that doesn't mean the universe is telling you that you just have to do this on your own. That means try again. That's all it means. Try again. We've got the Facebook group that's pretty active. So continue to stay plugged in, get the notifications, see what people are posting. We looked at your reasons why you want to drop the weight. We created a food release list that some of you may have eaten everything on recently. This is just hypothetical, not that anybody whose name starts with an A did that. But there is that food release list to fall back on. We did the values exercise. We did eating patterns, why we eat, when we eat, what we eat, how we eat, when we stop eating. All of those are really important to draw back on. We talked about the hunger distinctions, hunger from the head, hunger from our bodies. We talked about identities, limiting identities, healthy identities. We talked about the 16 components of commitment, our healthy identity I just mentioned, the mirror exercise I've alluded to a couple times, and you've got all kinds of notes from this course that I suggest you go back and read, reread, remind yourself of. And you've also got a $25 private coaching offer that you can use. And for some of you, you're going to need more than just one session. Some of you are going to need or want more private coaching to support you through this journey. And if that's what you need or want, then that's great. Whatever you need to achieve the kind of life that you want, do it. Don't just surrender to your circumstances and say, well, because my body seems to really want sugar, I can't do a sugar cleanse, or I can't lose weight, or I tried that diet, but it was really hard for me, therefore I can't do it anymore. Or I tried the accountability, or I posted a thing on the Facebook group and only 2 people saw it, therefore I'm not going to post anymore. If you're a victim of the circumstances, especially the external validation of the circumstances, then you're not really fighting for yourself, and you're not going to intentionally create a life that you want to live. You're going to constantly be a victim of the circumstances, and you're going to be living by chance and in control of others, rather than living by choice and in control of self. So whatever it is you have to do, do it to support yourself. So we've talked about this a little bit in the modules in the past, and now we're going to dive in more specifically and make this our intention. Sorry for the sirens if you hear them. Weight release is very simple. Remember, we need a simple plan. Weight is dropped, weight is released when the calories in are less than the calories out. It's just that simple. Now, there might be some people who have some kind of biological issue with something going on in your body, some kind of chemical imbalance, some kind of gland that is a little bit more active or what have you, but nowhere near what a lot of people think they might have. So the reality is there are certain biological challenges that some people have, and for the most part, this is true for most humans. That if you take in a certain amount of calories and you expend more calories, then you're going to start releasing weight. If you take in more calories than you expend, you're going to start gaining weight. It's just that simple. That's how the body works. It's all based on energy. And to simplify it ridiculously, to increase calories out, move more. To decrease calories in, eat less. So there you have it. We could have just done that on slide number 1 of module number 1, and the whole program would have been over, right? Move more, eat less. But we all know that. And just because we know that doesn't mean that we're able to create habits around it. So now, 9 modules in, we are approaching the simple truth that pretty much everybody already knew, but we're coming from the bottom up and from the top down. If you remember that diamond that we talked about, we're looking at the eater and the purpose for eating, not just the eating rules. And we need to look at the eating rules, but we just need leverage from below and leverage from above to then have a better chance at succeeding with the very basic rules of move more and eat less. Now, if you want to improve your energy and health, you can't just eat less, because if you go on, the ELF diet with candy cane, candy corn, syrup, and something else, I think they believe in the 5 food groups. I didn't think of that till now. I would have looked it up. If you just eat garbage and you lower your calorie intake, then you might lose weight, or your body might think you're in hibernation mode, so it won't lose weight, or you'll lose weight in a very unhealthy way. So you're not going to increase energy or increase your health by just eating less calories if the calories are garbage. So what we want to do is we want to eat a little bit less and we want to eat a little bit better. And if we extend those choices of a little bit less, a little bit better, move a little bit more, we extend those out over a long period of time, now we will have habits that start to change the way our bodies operate. And when you make foundational choices like this, then your habits are going to last longer. So in the future, it will be harder for you to fall off the wagon so quickly than it is when we make these restrictive, willpower-based, short-term diet changes. And after 8 weeks of eating celery and lettuce, we eat a whole cake. When your choices are more foundational and the habits are foundational, then even when you stray from your plan, you're not going to fall as far and you're not going to fall as fast, and the body will be able to withstand some of those other choices because you've literally changed the foundation of the body. So you've shifted the way your body moves and processes food and feels. And so some of those unhealthy choices later on won't have as negative of an effect when you've got foundational habits. Now, the only way to know the calories in is to track them. I've mentioned, I think, a couple times in previous modules that I advise you, or I think one of them was to, if you want like the, whatever I called it, the optimal or the overachiever plan, you could track your food. And I know from several messages that I received, some people are like, I'm not doing that. And they hate tracking their food, and they hate measuring themselves, and they hate stepping on a scale. All of that is a form of self-hatred. And it's okay for you to realize that that's not going to be your leverage, but it's not okay for you to be afraid of looking at your body. If you're afraid of looking at your body, that's self-hatred, it's self-abandonment, it's self-disgust. If you choose not to look at your body, that's a different thing. And when I say look at your body, I'm not saying just physically look at your body in the mirror. I'm saying look at your body in the form of measurements, in the form of weight. If it's a choice and you realize that's not what motivates you, that's fine. If it's a fear and you're afraid to see it, that's not fine. Because the energy inside of that fear is actually really poisonous. The energy of, I don't even want to look at you because you disgust me kind of vibe. And I would imagine all of us have some emotion around that. And so a lot of times when we're not willing or when we're afraid to measure things, it's actually perpetuating this self-judgment, self-punishment, self-abuse, self-hatred. But when it comes to something like calories, you can't manage anything that you don't track. So my invitation to all of you, whether it's irritating or not, is to track your calories. Now, it's going to take some effort, but are you worth it? Are you worth some inconvenient effort if you want to change your results? Remember, there's no such thing as a familiar path to a new territory. So if you don't enjoy the inconvenient effort of tracking your calories and paying attention to the way you eat, then all you can achieve is what you've always achieved before. The other thing with calories is it's important that we don't go too low, because that's not going to be a foundational change. And You're not always going to have to track calories for the rest of your life. Once you really get a handle on it and you get a sense of how many calories you're putting in your body, or you start to just remember certain calories for certain foods, then you can taper off the activity of tracking calories. But you have to build that muscle and build that efficiency, build the capacity before you just say, well, I don't want to do it because I don't like doing it. Now, many of you already know this. To release 1 pound of weight, it's generally thought that you've got to have a 3,500 calorie deficit. Don't worry so much about splitting hairs and if it's exactly that and how many exact calories are in an apple, and what if it's a green apple versus a red apple versus a yellow apple. I don't want you to irritate yourself being focused too much on getting it right. Tracking is better than no tracking. And if you start tracking your food, the awareness that you'll get is more important than whether you're 5 calories or 50 calories or several hundred calories off. So don't make this an exercise of misery by trying to make sure you don't make any mistakes. That's not the point here. But it helps to have an idea, an intention of what it is that we're going after. So the I put rough calorie averages are thought to be about 2,500 for men, 2,000 for women. Do whatever research you want to do, or do whatever tracking you want to do individually if you want a little bit more specifics on that. And if some of you know that those numbers are not correct, please don't correct me. Because remember, in the very beginning of this program, it's not about getting these things right. It's about changing emotional habits. So I'm less concerned with the technical correctness of food information, especially when there's no universal agreement on some of these things. I'm much more concerned with how do we manage ourselves, how do we modify behaviors, etc. And it's helpful to have some guidelines. So the rough guideline is 2,500 and 2,000. If you're more active, obviously you're going to be burning a little bit more calories. There are other things that are considerations that I don't even want to pretend to know about. But if you want a little bit more individual specificity, go ahead and get it. Otherwise, just use these as guides and it'll be fine. So if you want to drop approximately 1 pound per week, what that means is we need to average roughly 500 calories of deficit a day. So if you expend 2,000 calories, take in 1,500 calories, you're at a 500 calorie deficit every day. And then over the course of a week, that's going to turn out to be roughly 3,500 calories. Now, the mind hates the idea of only dropping 1 pound a week. But what if over the course of the year, some of you that want to drop more than 50 pounds, what if over the course of a year, you've done it and you've done it in a healthy way and you've done it in a foundational way? Would you take it? Versus let's drop 30 pounds over the next 3 months and then over the course of a year, you're right back where you are now. Or up a little bit. Because I think the average person actually gains 1 or 2 pounds with every diet they try. Once they recover back to the old habits, they actually put more weight on, average. And once we build these habits, you can go a little quicker. There's nothing wrong with increasing, but I want you to do it from a foundational, habit-driven place rather than a willpower, short-term, shallow place. So don't think that you can only drop 1 pound a week if you want, but don't make that the goal early on. And also remember that as you start eating healthier, you're going to drop a lot of the toxins that you're carrying around in your body, and those don't follow this calorie formula as much. So early on, you can drop quite a bit more weight by releasing the toxins in your body and not just by calories in, calories out. So once you eat a little healthier, and I forget, for some reason I remember, I think I heard that a lot of people can drop maybe 3 to 5% of their body weight, depending on how poor their diet is, in the very early phases of just these kinds of toxins. And then you start to stabilize. And so what happens is some people might drop 5 pounds in the first 2 weeks of making healthy choices, but then they don't continue dropping 5 pounds every 2 weeks, and then they get frustrated with that. That's actually a good sign. That means your body is now normalized, and now we're just dropping weight based on calories in, calories out, rather than carrying around all these toxins. So roughly 1 pound a week is great. If you want a little bit more, great. And the thing is, we're making long-term changes, and part of making long-term changes is for you to notice feedback and then adjust accordingly. So some of you might increase your calories and you increase your calories out, decrease your calories in, and realize you don't have a lot of energy. So you want to increase your calories a little bit to get a little bit more energy. Or you might want to change calories. So calories from carbs, you might want to turn into calories from protein, or vice versa, and increase energy. So it's these kinds of adjustments over the course of, I would say, the middle range of making these changes that are really important. People make short-term changes quickly, and then the body starts to hit what sometimes feels like a plateau, although a lot of times it's not a plateau. You're just not making the rapid changes that you were. And that's when we can make some of the shifts, smaller shifts, 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree shifts that are actually going to give us a lot more outcome benefits in the long run. But sometimes those don't happen until a month or 2 months or maybe even 4 months or longer into this process. Now, if you've not tried this, I'm going to invite all of you to try what I personally have found as the best way to manage calorie input. For me, I'm just trying to kind of filter some thoughts that I'm having right now. But the best way I found is intermittent fasting. It's something that I was totally 100% against when I first heard about it. I thought it was dumb. I've also heard that if you fast, you put your body in hibernation mode. And so I had all these justified reasons to not even try it, not do it. And then I tried it once and it didn't feel good. And so I stopped. But once you get used to intermittent fasting, it's actually quite easy because the body just will adjust to eating patterns, especially if it's intentional and you support your choices with a lot of things that I've been talking about. It's actually not that difficult. Intermittent fasting is when we don't eat for a prolonged period of time, basically every day. So you might have heard of day-long fasts or 2 or 3 day-long fasts, and I've done those as well and had short-term success, but I've never been able to really sustain it. Intermittent fasting is something that you can do, and it works on its own. What's the best way to put this? Like every day that you do it, it has benefit to it. Whereas there are other forms of fasting, such as, like, for instance, a ketogenic diet, if you're familiar with that, is a kind of diet where you eat a lot of fats and you put your body into what's called ketosis, where your body starts using fat as your energy source. So you basically remove most of the carbs from your body, and your body can only burn fat as the energy source. And that's fantastic when you're in that state. But if you're in that state of ketosis and then you eat too many carbs one day, you'll pull yourself out of ketosis, and then it takes a while to get back into it. And that's not a very easy diet for a lot of people to sustain. So it works while you're doing it. It's just not easy to sustain. Now, if any of you are sustaining it, great. Please don't change anything that's working for you. But what I've found and what's helped me emotionally is intermittent fasting, because if you kind of mess up one day, it doesn't kick your body out of the fat burning phase, and then you got to almost suffer for 2 or 3 more days to get back into it. So it feels like punishment, actually. And for me, the leverage was fear. I was afraid of losing that ketogenic state, the ketosis state, and so I was afraid of food. And that didn't feel good either. So we don't want to be driven by fear necessarily. So intermittent fasting, I'm not an expert on it. I've read a bunch of articles on it. I've tried it myself. So I'm going to share with you what I've learned. You can certainly do your own research. You can share what you guys have learned in the group if you want. What I've learned is that so basically intermittent fasting is when you eat in shorter windows, 6 to 8 hour windows of the day. Now that might sound really, really short, but you're going to be sleeping during the non-eating windows. So anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, depending on how much you sleep. And then you can break it up a little bit. So a few hours are before you go to bed, and then several hours are after you wake up. For men, what I've read, and again, there's a lot of differing opinions out there, so you can do your own research if you want. But if you follow these guidelines, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about getting it right and perfect and all that stuff. That's not going to help. For men, the non-eating window is generally thought to be about 14 to 16 hours. So that means we have 8 to 10 hours of eating. For women, it's a little bit different. Don't ask me why. I've just read this and heard this talking to people. For women, the non-eating hour is a little bit more, which means the eating window is a little bit less. So for women, you're looking at 6 to 8 hour windows of eating. Anyway, so understand you're making shifts, and the idea here is that the longer you go without eating, the longer you're in fat burning mode. So if you go 12 hours without eating, assuming that you're not putting anything in your body, you're still staying hydrated, you're moving, you're not putting yourself into that hibernated state, then 12 hours is better than 8 hours, and 14 hours is better than 12, and 16 is better than 14. So it's not like 16 or bust. It's just see if you can work your way into a longer window of not eating. Now, I want to give you some tips that I've learned for anybody that's done this, or any of you that learn other things that work for you as you start to implement this. Go ahead and share. I have started drinking black coffee, I would say over the last 8 months, because of intermittent fasting. I drink coffee as a hunger suppressant. I generally drink decaf coffee because I didn't drink coffee at all really in my life, maybe once or twice a year. And so when I have caffeine and no food in my body, I feel like I'm high. I mean, my body really is. I mean, caffeine plus no food does a number on my body, and I don't like it. I actually feel jittery, and it kind of freaks me out. And so I don't want the caffeine of the coffee. I just want the diet suppressant of the coffee. So I generally drink 2 cups of decaf coffee in the morning and then start eating around lunchtime. That's what's worked for me. It doesn't matter whether so basically what you're doing is you're removing one of the 3 main meals. So you're either removing breakfast or you're removing dinner. Most people that I've talked to and the evidence I've read online say it's harder to remove dinner because dinner is a little bit more of a social activity, especially if you have family. And so it's a lot easier for me to skip breakfast than it is for me to sit at the dinner table while my wife and 2 kids are eating the food. And here I have my temptations are high, and I want to eat what they're eating, and I feel like a jerk if I'm not eating. So for me, it's much easier to skip breakfast and then just eat lunch, a snack, and dinner than it is for me to do breakfast, a snack, and lunch, and then not eat dinner. If that's different for you, do whatever works for you. But most of the people find it easier to push after skipping breakfast than to stop eating earlier. But whatever works for you. So black coffee or non-sweetened tea can help keep your belly with the sense of, it's not going to feel full, but it feels like it's getting nutrition. And it's not really technically getting much nutrition from non-sweetened tea or black coffee because there are very few calories at all in those. But it's giving you the sensation that you're drinking something more than water. If you only drink water and you don't drink coffee or tea, that's fine. Just for most people, that's not as easy. And most people drink coffee or tea. So you can use that during your non-drinking windows, or non-eating windows rather, as long as you don't sweeten it with something. If you put coffee, or if you put sugar in your coffee, or if you put milk or some kind of sweetener in your coffee, you're putting nutrition in your body and you're breaking your fast. But if you're only drinking black coffee or only drinking just tea with nothing else in it, then you're not breaking your fast. So it's a way for us to give our bodies the sensation that we're eating without really breaking our fast. So that's what I've been doing, and it's actually not difficult. It's not difficult to get used to black coffee. I would have told anybody, if they would have asked me this question a year ago, there is no way I will ever drink 1 cup of coffee, ever. Not per day, ever. Let alone get into a habit of it. But I understand the purpose of it, so there's an intellectual leverage here, and I started to feel the benefits of it, and we always have the ability to change our taste buds. That's one of the cool things about our taste buds. We can change them. So when you know the purpose of the coffee, it will help you overcome the addictions of what you generally use your coffee as a vehicle for. And most people who are addicted to coffee, they're not addicted to the coffee. They're addicted to the sugar and the sweets and, the things that they put into it, or the experience of drinking coffee. But everybody that I've talked to about this that had a reason to switch to black coffee, what they said is they actually enjoy the smell and the taste of the coffee after they get over the bitterness of it in the very beginning. They actually enjoy it more when they are doing it for a purpose and they see the results of it, and they're being present with it. So for those of you that want to do this and you think there's no way no way at all that you're ever going to be able to drink black coffee, you can. And if it's going to make you healthier and keep you alive longer and give you more vitality, then I suggest suck it up and just try it for a while. Try it for, for a few weeks, and let's just see what happens. The other thing that I've learned is to stay busy during this time. Don't just sit on the couch and go, whoa, I got 4 more hours before I can eat. And then look at your stomach and go, don't worry, we're going to be able to eat in 3 hours and 59 minutes from now. You're going to go crazy. You're going to be miserable. But when you stay busy and you're not looking at the clock and you're not noticing how long it's been since you've eaten, then it's so much easier to stay engaged in whatever it is that you're doing. And you can even exercise. I always exercise in the mornings. Again, all the research that I read and the people that I've talked to, they have no problem exercising during the fast. And when you exercise during the fast, you're actually burning I don't know technically if you're burning more calories while you're working out, but when you exercise while you're in a fasted state and your body's already in a little bit more of a hyper calorie burn state, then it's better. Now, in the earlier phases of this, when you're creating the habit, you might feel like you have a lot less energy, but trust me, once you do it, almost everybody actually says they have more energy over the course of the entire day. And even during the fasted state, there's more energy, because a lot of the crap that we put on our bodies requires energy from our bodies to handle. So when we're putting the sugars and we're putting the things that dehydrate us in our bodies, now we're using some of the energy of our body to manage the poison that we just put in it. Well, when we're not putting that poison in it anymore, and after we get through the first few initial phases of the withdrawals, or what feels like withdrawals, our bodies are actually running on healthier energy. And most people experience a heightened sense of energy rather than a lower sense of energy once they get through the earlier phases. And finally, this is not going to be something that your body loves if you've never done this before. When it's addicted to things, or it's addicted to an eating schedule, or it's addicted to the emotional attachments to eating and stuff, your body's going to be like, hey, what are you doing to me? I don't like this. I'm going to make you feel sick. I'm going to give you a headache. I'm going to do anything that I possibly can to get you to feed me. So ease into it. Don't just say, oh yeah, I love this and I want to eat calorie deficit all the time and just cut out that morning meal and we're going to do this forever and I'm going to do this 7 days a week. I don't suggest you do that. I suggest you ease your body into it. So my suggestion is you do intermittent fasting for 2 or 3 days this week. If you want to get to 4 or 5, or if some of you've done this before, that's fine. This is all based on you. And you might be intermittent fasting now for 4 or 5 days. I'm not asking you to cut it back to 2 or 3. I'm asking you to increase just a little bit if you want better results. But for those of you that have never done intermittent fasting, try it for 2 to 3 days. Just tell yourself you can do anything for 1 day. And if you did it 1 day, you can do it another day. And just start to create the different sensations in your body, start to shift some of the foundations. And then generally what's advised is you start with 2 or 3 days and then you increase 1 day a week until you're at 5 to 6 days a week. With intermittent fasting, the goal is not even necessarily to do it all the time every day. Almost everybody that I've talked to, the rhythm is right around 5 or 6 days a week. And I would say most people that are successful with it actually only do it 5 days a week. And there is a little bit of research that says you don't want your body to be intermittent fasting every single day all the time. It's actually helpful to put a few more calories into your body than you expend once or twice a week. So we'll talk about that later. But I don't want you to think that the goal is ever going to be intermittent fasting all the time, every single day, because that's not healthy. So my invitation to you is to track your calories. I think somebody posted something in the chat box about a certain app that they like. I didn't read the full comment, so I didn't check it. When I track calories, I have used my FitnessPal. I've used a couple other things. Sometimes I just track it on my notes app on my phone, so that's not really a fitness app. But I included this link. If you want, this one is, I think it's 16 different calorie apps or fitness apps. So you can click on that if you want. You can share whatever it is that you enjoy with the crowd if you want to do that. I want you to perform intermittent fasting for 2 to 3 days this week. I want you to do your best to eat at roughly a 250 to 500 calorie deficit for 4 to 5 days of the week. So even on the days that you're not intermittent fasting, I want you to try to get your calories under your calorie output. Now, all of this is building awareness. Okay. Remember, we do a lot of this work for 3 months from now, not for right now. Now, you might have benefits right away, but we're doing this work for the long-term effects. And your awareness is going to be more important than your immediate perfection. Trust me. And consistency trumps intensity. So we're practicing here. We're looking at making these changes. We're noticing how our body feels. And the real benefit is going to be in the future, but we've got to have a baseline. We've got to start to bring some more of this awareness in so that we can manage it a little bit better. I want you to increase your exercise to try to burn an additional 250 to 500 calories 3 to 4 times this week. That could be a walk for some of you, could be going to the gym, could be just doing something at your house. Whatever it is, let's increase our calorie. And I think most of us know that when we increase our calorie expenditures and we're working out more and we're exercising more, it increases metabolism a little bit. So we actually do start to increase the number of calories that we're burning above and beyond just the calories that we're burning in exercise. So it's got benefits all the way around. Great question was just sent in. Is it better to fast 3 days in a row? No. My experience is that it's not. I would suggest fasting 1 day, then eating regular 2 or 3 days, then fasting again, eating regular 2 or 3 days, and fasting again. Thanks for that question. I think that's really important. And it's better psychologically and emotionally. It was for me, and it's better for the people that I've talked to do it that way, because it's somewhat of a shock to the system. You know, it's kind of like the sugar cleanse for those of you that did it. A couple days in, if your body didn't like it, it's not going to want to continue. And this one is somewhat of a shock as well. And so I want you to do it, notice the benefits of it. But then the 2 to 3 days in between, that doesn't mean eat everything and, eat 1,000 calories above your expenditure, because that's not going to help. So the intermittent fasting, but then the other days you're still eating healthy and you're wanting to eat a little bit less than you expend, but you don't necessarily want to do the fasting. So thank you for that question. I think that's an important one. Now, one of the cool things with intermittent fasting is you can actually eat a little bit bigger meals. You're not going to eat, you don't want to make up for the full amount of calories that you would eat at breakfast. But if you're eating 2 meals and a snack, or maybe just 2 meals for some of you, then you can actually increase a little bit the calories at each one of those meals and still keep your calories at a deficit. You still keep your calories lower, even though individual meals are a little bit higher. Or for a lot of people, this gives you the leeway to add some sweets. So when you start tracking your calories and you understand that you want to hit, you want to come in at, let's say, 1,700 calories or 1,500 calories, you might eat a couple meals and you've still got 100 calories to go, and you might eat a little piece of chocolate. So what intermittent fasting does is it gives you a little bit more leeway every single day to give yourself some of those food rewards, but you're doing it in a more of a controlled way, and you're still able to lose weight. So if you're eating primarily healthy and you throw in a few hundred calories of ice cream or 100 calories of a little, bite of chocolate or something like that, but you're eating primarily healthy, you're keeping your calories lower, and you're intermittent fasting, you're going to be able to lose weight. So you can eat a piece of chocolate every day and still lose weight. That's one of the reasons that I like intermittent fasting, and one of the emotional reasons, psychological reasons that a lot of people like intermittent fasting is that it doesn't feel like you're restricted from a lot of the things that you want to eat. You just got to fit it into the plan. So increase your exercise. If you want some more information on sugar consumption, if you want to continue the sugar cleanse, or you just want to continue lowering your sugar intake, I think a lot of you had some big awareness around what your sugar intake was, then I put a couple of videos there that I found. There's a million videos out there on sugar consumption and how to stop eating it and stuff. So these are not, compared to all the other thousands of videos, these are just ones that I thought were good. And if you want to take a look at those, you can. That's not mandatory. It's optional if sugar is still something you really want to focus on. Do the mirror exercise every night this week. That's not optional. That is mandatory. Leave food on your plate at least 50% of the time. I want you to still continue to hack away at that emotional habit that really stops a lot of us. And finally, probably the most important one, pre-decide that this is all going to be super fun. So before we end today, I want to say that once we get into these kinds of specifics, this is where the game is won or lost for most people. Because a lot of people are going to have individual questions. Well, what about, how does this apply to me? Or what if I want to do this? And what if I want to skip that? And, how do I put my individual habits into these guidelines? And that tends to be somewhat fragmenting for our energy and focus. It tends to be frustrating sometimes or overwhelming because now a lot of the discussion in the group or the discussion for accountability partners tends to be a little more overwhelming because people are on different paths. So I just want you to know that's natural, it's normal, it's going to happen just about all the time in a group program. Once we get specific, then it can get a little messy. That's part of it. And I want you to be independent, not dependent on rules anyway. So if you find yourself getting frustrated, irritated, wanting to quit, deciding that you're just not going to play along anymore and it's detrimental to you, then get the support that you need. So it's going to be a somewhat bumpy road for almost everybody. Please be aware of that. So if it's bumpy for you, that doesn't mean you suck. It doesn't mean that you should compare yourself to the people in the group that seem like they're just doing it all easily and posting their pictures and yay for me, and all of a sudden you decide it's not easy for you, so you're just so you can't win unless you go get a box of donuts or two. Manage that. If that's your internal dialogue, then that's something that can be managed. It's not a reason that you can't win. It's just something that we've got to manage. And shying away from it, getting upset by it, not doing anything to correct it, certainly isn't going to change anything going forward. So we're playing a deep game here. We're approaching, confronting, touching emotions, patterns, habits, identities, values. It's not clean work all the time, but it's the work that works. And it's the way to keep it going. And it's the way to understand yourself. So I honor and acknowledge all of you that are willing to do this kind of work. Be gentle with yourself. Remember that it's going to take patience. It's going to take self-awareness. It's going to take self-encouragement. It's going to take support. It's going to take the accountability. It's going to take all these things that most people are demanding of themselves that it doesn't take. But it will for almost everybody. So manage that. Manage your expectations encourage yourself, get the support that you need, and all will be fine. Here's what I promise. There's not a single one of you that can't make these changes. The way you make your changes might not be the way I make my changes, might not be the way somebody else in the group makes their changes, but there's not a single one of you that cannot make these changes unless you decide that you can't and then therefore quit. But there's so much support in this program. If you end up quitting, it's because you have not used the resources and support that's available to you. And if you're frustrated by that, well, I suggest you sign up for the $25 private coaching call. That is such a ridiculously low priced value and asset for you so that we can support you through the things that are frustrating and you need just a little bit more help with. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully on some level it's exciting. We are here to support you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please let us know. Post the questions in the group. Share your wins, share commitments, share whatever it is that you want to share. This is the time to increase the support that we hold each other and ourselves in, not decrease the support just because things might get a little more challenging, a little bumpy, a little messy. This is the time to lean in, not lean away. So with that, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Please share the results. If you decide to intermittent fast tomorrow, then let us know. Share that with us so that we can be inspired by all of you as well inside the group. Take care, everyone. Have an awesome night. We'll see you on Facebook.